What if Beethoven never composed his symphonies? What if someone gave him the scores and he merely copied them? But that someone only had the music because Beethoven had written them. And so the loop continues. Who then is the real composer? Welcome to Fata Morgana, where we wander through the mists of time, chase mirages of logic, and dare to ask questions that may never have answers. Today we step into one of the strangest riddles of time and existence, the Bootstrap paradox. The Bootstrap paradox is a causal loop where something, an object, a piece of information, or even a person is sent back in time and becomes the cause of itself. It has no discernible origin. Its name comes from the idiom pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps, doing the impossible. Here is a classic example. A scientist receives a blueprint for a time machine from a mysterious visitor. He builds it, then travels back in time and gives the blueprint to her younger self. Where did the blueprint come from? It's a loop with no start and no end. An idea that exists without ever being created. To question origins is to question the foundation of thought. Aristotle argued that every effect has a cause, the foundation of Western logic. Buddhist philosophy, by contrast, sees time as cyclical. Karma, rebirth, samsara. All are loops without clear beginnings. And in Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, life loops infinitely, every moment repeating forever. So the Bootstrap paradox is not merely science fiction, it's a metaphysical koan, a paradox that demands reflection more than resolution. The earliest and most profound explorations of the Bootstrap paradox come from fiction, that sacred workshop thought experiments. Robert A. Heinlein's 1941 story, By His Bootstraps, is the namesake. A tale of a man who steps into a time loop involving multiple versions of himself. Heinlein's All You Zombies, 1959, takes it further. The time traveler turns out to be their own mother and father, born, raised, and created by themselves. But the roots go even deeper. In Oedipus Rex, fate loops upon itself. Oedipus tries to avoid prophecy, but his actions fulfill it. In Norse mythology, Odin sacrifices himself to himself. The myths of resurrection, from Osiris to Christ, contain elements of temporal transcendence. Rebirth as a self-originating act. Stories, after all, are loops. We return to them again and again. Let's move from myth to math. Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity allows for closed time-like curves, theoretical paths in space-time where one can return to an earlier point. In 1949, Kurt Gödel proposed a rotating universe that permits such loops. But just because the math allows, it doesn't mean reality does. Stephen Hawking proposed a chronology protection conjecture, suggesting the universe forbids time travel to prevent paradoxes. Still, others push the boundary. Kip Thorne and colleagues in the 1980s showed that wormholes could be used for time travel, at least on paper. David Deutsch, a quantum physicist, argued that Bootstrap paradox might be resolved through quantum multiverses, where every loop spawns a new reality. But here lies the tension. If the paradox is impossible, why does it make sense in theory? If it's possible, why haven't we seen it? And if we ever do, will we ever know? While time travel may remain fiction, the paradox echoes in real life. Some conspiracy theorists believe alien tech, reverse engineered by humans, will one day be sent back, creating a loop of lost origin. More grounded is the story of Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, an iconic piece whose true authorship is debated. If someone discovered it centuries later, claimed it as an inspiration, and caused it to be attributed backward, history folds on itself. AI now writes code, poetry, music. What happens when an AI trained on human art begins to generate art? Which trains future AI, which inspires future humans? A loop is forming, one where authorship dissolves. Some philosophers argue that religious texts passed down for centuries are based on cycles of interpretation, mistranslation, and rediscovery, creating feedback loops of belief that feel self-sustaining. Is that a bootstrap paradox of culture? Nations often create their own bootstrap paradoxes. The founding fathers of America drew on Enlightenment ideals. Yet the Enlightenment itself was shaped by revolution, inspired by previous struggles. In turn, today's politicians interpret those founding principles to justify new laws, which then shape the perception of the past. A country builds its narrative, teaches it to the next generation, which then rewrites history through the lens of that narrative. History becomes self-written. Scientists and logicians challenge the paradox. The principle of causality is the backbone of physics. Its effects can precede causes. Then science collapses. The grandfather paradox. What if you go back and kill your grandfather? Illustrates the chaos that would ensue. The Novikov self-consistency principle, however, offers a compromise. Time travel might be allowed, but only in ways that are logically consistent. You could go back and influence the past, but not change it. So perhaps the bootstrap paradox is not forbidden, just inevitable. First, it humbles us. The idea that something would exist without origin is deeply unsettling and beautiful. It challenges our obsession with linearity, our fixation on authorship, our belief in progress as a one-way street. Secondly, it reveals that time is not what we think it is. We measure time in clocks and calendars, but it may be memory, consciousness, and causality that truly define its shape. Finally, it teaches us that some answers may not exist, and that's okay. The bootstrap paradox is a mirror, not for time, but for us. We seek meaning, we trace beginnings, but sometimes what we find is a loop. If future technology, quantum computing, AI, neural memory storage allows us to upload ourselves, then what happens when we reincarnate as digital beings? Could we find ourselves in a loop? If time travel is ever achieved, even for particles, would our concept of origin vanish? Perhaps centuries from now, someone will read this script and think it inspired the first thought that led to its own creation. Imagine waking up with a book beside your bed. It tells your life story in detail, including how you found this book. Read it, and later write the same book. Now ask, who wrote it first? This is the bootstrap paradox, a story without beginning, a mystery without end. And perhaps the only real answer is the question itself. Thank you for watching Fata Morgana, where the past is just the future, happening in reverse. Subscribe share, and wander with us again. Loop never ends. Neither does the search.